Gentlemen, let me begin with a truth that might shock you. Most men over 50 think they already know how to touch a woman with their hands, but research shows nearly 7 out of 10 women say their partner never does it the right way. That means the majority of men are leaving their partners unsatisfied, and often without even realizing it. This is why so many relationships lose passion, not because age takes it away, but because the right skills were never learned. I am Dr. Mohit Khera, a urologist and men's health expert with more than 3 decades of experience helping men restore confidence, vitality, and intimacy. Over the years, I have worked with thousands of couples, and I can tell you with certainty, when a man understands how to use his fingers correctly, he can create deeper intimacy, stronger trust, and pleasure his partner in ways that even young men often fail to achieve. Here's the paradox. The simplest, most natural tool you already have, your own fingers, can give her shaking, full-body orgasms that no pill or performance booster can match. Yet most men ignore this skill, rush it, or do it completely wrong. That is why today, I will reveal 7 expert tips, drawn from science and experience, that show you exactly how to finger a woman the right way. These are not tricks. They are proven techniques that any man, especially over 50, can master to reignite passion and connection. And I will tell you now, the 5th tip is the one that separates ordinary touch from unforgettable pleasure. Stay with me, because once you learn these secrets, your age will no longer feel like a limitation. It will become your greatest advantage. Before we get started, make sure you subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any of my future guidance on intimacy and men's health. And if this video resonates with you, drop a 1 in the comments below. If it doesn't, type 0 and let me know how I can better serve you. Now that you understand why this skill matters more than ever, let's move into the first essential step. The biggest mistake older men make is skipping the warm-up, rushing too quickly. If you want her body to truly open and respond, foreplay is not optional, it's the foundation. Tip 1. Don't skip the warm-up. Gentlemen, let me be completely honest with you. Over the years in my clinic, I've sat across from countless men in their 60s and 70s who believed foreplay was just something you did in your younger years, a stepping stone on the way to the so-called main event. But the truth is, as women age, their bodies respond differently. Hormonal changes, slower arousal, and even a touch of anxiety about intimacy all mean that the warm-up is not just helpful, it is absolutely essential. Think of it like starting a fine old car on a cool morning. You don't just slam the key and hit the gas. You give it time to warm, to run smooth, to prepare for the road ahead. Your partner's body is much the same. Without gentle kissing, caressing, and teasing, her tissues may not be ready. Her blood flow takes time to increase, her lubrication develops gradually, and her clitoris needs patience before it becomes fully sensitive. If you rush, you risk making her feel pain or, worse, making her feel unseen. I still remember a patient of mine in his early 60s who came in frustrated, saying his wife seemed to shy away from intimacy. When I asked about his approach, he admitted he went straight for penetration, skipping the slow build. After he tried focusing on foreplay, stroking her hair, tracing her thighs, whispering words of affection, he told me the change was astonishing. She became more responsive, more eager, and the passion they thought was lost suddenly came rushing back. Warm-up is not about performance. It is about presence. It tells her you value her, that you are willing to invest time in her pleasure. It transforms intimacy from a duty into a dance. And when she feels that, her body opens in ways that surprise even her. So if foreplay is the doorway, what happens when you step inside too quickly, rushing past her readiness? That brings us to the second mistake, one that quietly ruins the experience for many couples. Tip 2. Don't rush inside. One of the most common mistakes I see older men make is believing that once the mood is set, the next logical step is to go straight inside with their fingers. I can't tell you how many patients have admitted to me that they thought penetration was the goal, the ultimate destination, when in reality it is only one part of a much larger journey. A woman's body is designed to respond gradually, not abruptly. When you rush, what could have been an experience of deep connection turns into discomfort or even disappointment. I still remember a gentleman in his late 60s who came to see me because intimacy with his wife had become strained. He was baffled, telling me she seemed distant, almost guarded. When I asked about how he touched her, he confessed he often went straight for penetration, skipping the exploration around her most sensitive outer areas. Once I guided him to slow down, to spend time tracing gentle circles around her clitoris, stroking the lips, and simply feeling her responses before ever sliding a finger inside, the change in their relationship was remarkable. He later told me, with a smile I'll never forget, that for the first time in years, his wife reached for him eagerly, no hesitation, no pulling away. There's something profoundly emotional about this as well. When you slow down, you're sending a message that she matters, that her readiness and comfort are more important than your urgency. Women, especially as they age, long to feel seen and cared for in this way. It's not about technique alone, it's about patience, presence, and respect. Penetration too soon is like interrupting a song just as the melody begins. But when you wait, when you tease, and allow her body to respond in its own rhythm, what follows is richer, deeper, and infinitely more satisfying. And once you've learned not to rush, the next challenge is just as important. Knowing how much pressure to use and why starting with one finger can make all the difference. Tip 3. Gentle pressure, one finger first. I've met so many men who think more is always better. 2 fingers right away, maybe even 3, with a kind of force that feels more like construction work than intimacy. Gentlemen, I need to tell you from both medical knowledge and years of experience, this is the fastest way to shut her body down. The vaginal tissue is delicate, full of sensitive nerve endings that can bring her immense pleasure if treated with care, but they can just as easily cause discomfort when overwhelmed. Going in heavy-handed is not a sign of confidence. It's a sign you're not listening to her body. One man in his early 70s told me how frustrated he was that his partner never seemed to enjoy being touched. When I asked him to describe his approach, he admitted that he always started with 2 fingers, applying firm pressure because he thought that's what she wanted. I guided him to try something different, just 1 finger, slow, deliberate strokes, and instead of pressing hard, to imagine he was tracing something fragile and precious. A week later, he returned with a look of amazement. His partner, who once pulled away, now leaned into his touch, sighing, relaxing, even guiding his hand to continue. That small shift, less force, fewer fingers, completely changed the way she responded. There's also something deeply emotional here. Using 1 finger first shows restraint. It shows patience. It communicates that you're not trying to take from her, but rather to explore with her, step by step. That kind of gentleness builds trust, and trust is what allows a woman to surrender fully to pleasure. The classic come hither motion, with a slow curl of your finger against the front wall of her vagina, is often far more powerful than any rough or hurried movement. So remember, start with less, not more. Her body will tell you when she's ready for more intensity, and when she does, the experience will be infinitely sweeter. And once you've mastered this patience, it's time to discover a hidden treasure inside her body that most men overlook entirely, the elusive but extraordinary G-spot. Tip 4. Learn to find the G-spot. Over the years, I've spoken with many men who quietly admitted they weren't sure the G-spot even existed. Some had heard about it in magazines, others dismissed it as a myth, and a few felt embarrassed because their partners never seemed to react when they tried to find it. Let me assure you, as a physician and as someone who has guided countless couples, the G-spot is very real, and when stimulated with patience and care, it can unlock a level of pleasure many women never thought possible. Biologically, the G-spot is located just 1 to 2 inches inside the vagina, on the front wall toward the belly button. When you slide a finger in and gently curl upward, you may notice the texture feels slightly different, a little spongier compared to the smoothness around it. That's your target. But here's the key. You don't jab, you don't thrust in and out like you're trying to hammer a nail. Instead, you use the come hither motion, slow and deliberate, gradually applying more pressure as she responds. I'll never forget a patient in his late 60s who told me he and his wife had been intimate for decades, but he had never once tried to focus on the G-spot. After I walked him through the anatomy and the technique, he went home and gave it a try. When he returned for his next visit, he was almost speechless, describing how his wife experienced orgasms unlike anything either of them had felt in years. That one discovery rekindled not only her desire, but also their bond as a couple. What makes this even more powerful is the emotional reaction it creates. When you take the time to explore, when you show her that you've learned something just for her, she feels seen, valued, and deeply desired. That kind of attentiveness can transform your relationship. So once you've discovered this hidden treasure, there's something just as important to master: the art of listening. Because no technique in the world matters if you're not tuned into the feedback she's giving you. Tip 5. Listen to her feedback, words and silence. Gentlemen, this is the point where skill turns into mastery. You can learn every technique, memorize every motion, but if you fail to notice her responses, you'll miss the very thing that separates ordinary touch from unforgettable intimacy. Every woman is unique. Some respond to gentle circles around the clitoris, others crave steady pressure inside, and some need both together. The secret is not in guessing, it's in listening. And listening is not just about words. It's about silence, about breath, about the way her body moves beneath your hand. I recall a man in his early 70s who came to me, frustrated that his wife seemed indifferent no matter what he tried. He told me he had read articles, even practiced techniques he thought were foolproof, but nothing seemed to work. When I asked him if he had ever simply asked her, or watched closely for her signals, he went quiet. That night, he decided to change. Instead of trying to impress her with a set of tricks, he slowed down, whispered gently, and asked if she liked the pace. He noticed her breathing quicken when he circled slower, and her hips shifted when he pressed just slightly deeper. For the first time in years, she moaned without hesitation. When he told me this story later, his eyes were wet with tears. He said, "Doctor, I didn't need more moves. I just needed to listen." That's the heart of it. Listening builds trust, and trust unlocks pleasure. When she feels you are paying attention, she lets go. And when she lets go, her body responds with intensity you can't create by force. The smallest adjustment, a change of angle or rhythm, can turn a good moment into a breathtaking one if you're tuned into her cues. But before you can even get to that point, there's something so basic, so often overlooked, that it can either make her relax completely or shut her down in an instant: your hygiene. And that brings us to the next tip. Tip 6. Hygiene is non-negotiable. This may sound so simple that many men overlook it, but in my years of practice, I have seen hygiene either make or break intimacy. Gentlemen, your hands are about to touch the most delicate and vulnerable part of your partner's body. If your nails are rough, if your hands are dry and cracked, or if you've come in from the yard without washing up, you're not only risking discomfort, you're risking her trust. And once trust is broken in the bedroom, it is very hard to rebuild. I once had a patient in his mid-60s who couldn't understand why his wife seemed tense every time he touched her. He swore he was gentle. He swore he followed all the advice he had read, but something wasn't right. When I asked if he trimmed his nails, he laughed and admitted he hadn't thought of it in years. His wife later confessed that his sharp nails had scratched her more than once, leaving her anxious rather than aroused whenever his hand moved toward her. After that conversation, he made it a ritual to keep his nails smooth and his hands moisturized. A few weeks later, he told me their intimacy felt brand new, like she was finally able to relax and enjoy his touch without fear. Such a small change, but it opened the door to connection. This isn't only about cleanliness, it's about respect. When a woman sees that you've prepared yourself, that you've taken the time to make sure every detail is right, she feels valued. She knows you didn't just think about your own needs, you thought about hers. That kind of attentiveness makes her body soften, her mind let go, and her heart open to you. But once your hands are clean and your touch is gentle, there's something even more powerful you must remember. No amount of technique will matter if you forget the emotional connection that binds it all together. And that brings us to the final, most important tip. Tip 7. Never forget emotional connection. Over the years, I've come to realize that the most skilled hands in the world mean very little without emotional presence. A woman doesn't just respond to pressure or rhythm, she responds to how safe, cherished, and connected she feels in that moment. I have spoken to countless women in their 50s, 60s, and beyond who told me their most powerful orgasms didn't come from the most complex technique, but from those times when they felt their partner was truly with them, attentive, patient, and emotionally present. I remember one man in his 70s who sat across from me, frustrated that his wife rarely reached climax. He had studied every manual, tried every position, and yet nothing seemed to work. When I asked him if he looked into her eyes, if he whispered to her, if he told her how beautiful she was while touching her, he looked down and admitted he hadn't. The next week, he returned with a softness in his voice. He told me that instead of focusing on performing, he focused on holding her, making eye contact, and speaking words of love while he touched her. For the first time in years, she cried out with passion, and afterward she whispered that she had never felt so close to him. That wasn't because of a new technique, it was because he remembered the heart behind it. Emotional connection works like fuel for the body. When she feels safe, her muscles relax, her blood flow improves, and her arousal deepens. Every stroke becomes amplified, every caress more meaningful. Without that connection, touch feels mechanical. With it, touch becomes electric. So never forget, intimacy is not just about what your hands are doing, it's about what your heart is communicating. And now that you've learned all 7 tips, it's time to see how they come together, because the way you close the circle can determine whether she remembers the night as ordinary or unforgettable. Conclusion. Gentlemen, if there's one thing I want you to take away from everything we've discussed, it's that intimacy at your age is not fading, it's evolving. These 7 tips are not tricks or shortcuts. They are ways to deepen connection and rediscover the pleasure that may have been missing for far too long. When you don't skip the warm-up, you show patience. When you avoid rushing inside, you show respect. When you begin with gentle pressure and one finger, you show care. When you take the time to find the G-spot, you show curiosity and dedication. When you listen to her feedback, both spoken and silent, you show attentiveness. When you maintain hygiene, you show thoughtfulness. And when you never forget the emotional connection, you show love, the most powerful ingredient of all. I've seen men in their 60s and 70s transform their relationships, not by chasing performance, but by slowing down, listening, and touching with presence. Many of them told me they never imagined they could bring their partner to such intense pleasure at this stage of life. Yet once they embraced these principles, their intimacy became richer than ever. Your age is not a weakness, it's your advantage. You carry the wisdom, patience, and steadiness that younger men often lack. With these 7 secrets, you can give her more than just physical satisfaction. You can give her safety, trust, and a kind of closeness that she will never forget. And that, gentlemen, is the true art of fingering a woman the right way.